conquering childhood cancer in a variety of fantastic ways. And DragonCon is using there's the QR code around here. And they are matching up to $125,000 towards that amazing charity, which you can also look them up. And they've done so many fantastic things so far, as well as passed like tons of standards for quality charities. So check them out.
And we have the QR codes for those charities out in front here. You can come scan them.
And we also have a track sponsor.
Yeah, which is also a QR code up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yep.
good news. Our track sponsor is Zakat. Zakat for over 22 years. Yeah. We love cats up here. For over 22 years, they've been empowering lives through disaster relief, food distribution, orphan care, and more. Their top-notch ratings from Charity Navigator and Better Business Bureau, that's the BBB, Wise Giving Alliance means that your contributions are going to make a difference. It means that your dollars go further. That's why they've top-ranked Zakat, zakat.org. They're the track sponsor, and thank you to cats everywhere, not just cat, but all cats.
Yeah. Thank you, cats.
Yeah, thank you, cats. Otherwise, we're here. This is the Composing for a Narrative panel. We are going to have Q&A at the end of it. So if you're on Twitch, you can start dropping those questions now. If you're in this room, you cannot. I am sorry for punishing you by not allowing you to just yell questions at us throughout the panel. But if you have them in your back pocket, we will get to them and have plenty of time for it. I know with the one that I have up here, that we could talk for forever about all sorts of different things, from gear through all the way to, I don't know.
From gear to here.
Plugins.
Gear to ear. Yeah, gear to ear, from everything to beginning to end. So
that's really good. I'm going to make that a panel.
From gear to ear.
From gear to ear.
Yeah.
That's a good title.
Yeah, but we're going to...
Copyright, don't steal.
We're going to just kind of go through some quick general things just to get everything going and get those questions flowing. But before we jump into that, I'm going to let these two introduce themselves.
My name is Gabriel Perez. I'm a professional audio engineer. I work on the Quid Pro Roll podcast. I also, for the Quid Pro Roll podcast, I specifically compose all the original music for it. I do the audio and vocal effects and the editing, and sometimes make sound effects with my face, because that's easier than having to buy them.
For applause in here, if everybody could just do a Foley impression, like just any sound effects you want, that is the applause that we'll do. So hit it.
Yes.
Yeah. We got some seals in there. That was good.
I will add that in post.
Scott.
I'm Scott Moore, aka Groovis for Life. I also occasionally edit for Goblins and Growlers, or I edit for Goblins. Yeah. Hold on, brain's catching up.
We can fix it in post.
That will be cut. I edit for Goblins and Growlers. Occasionally, I also do work for Quid Pro Roll. God, the names.
I know. We made that one intentionally.
Yeah. And then I first got my start with the Blood Crow Stories, which is a serialized horror podcast. I did the sound effects, Foley, mixing, editing, recording, everything audio. I've also done some film work, some TV work, and general just making music on my own.
Yeah, they're both musicians as well.
Yes.
And so from
classically and in some cases terrifyingly trained on certain things.
I am not trained at all.
From gear to ear, we have the full thing. My name's Lon. I'm the Dungeon Meowster. Raising money for cat charities through TTRPG games. That's how I got started. Now I do a lot of things, including run a bunch of tabletop gaming companies, some built around building inclusive communities, some built around publishing, some where we've got a 501c3 that we're working on right now. So lots of really fun stuff. Panel isn't about me, but if we get into any of the specifics on like contract and legal stuff or anything like that, then I'm probably the person to ask.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So
please.
As it goes.
There's a reason that I asked you to be on this panel.
I know. Speaking of reasons why anyone should be on the panel.
It's not just because of your delicious minty hair.
How do you use audio to create tone or evoke feeling. So let's say you have a project, somebody has given you some direction on it, and or you're kind of getting direction from the content. What do you do from that point forward to start to get into something as nebulous as when people are talking about tone or feeling?
So it generally depends on really what's going on. What is the mood or feeling that you're going for? So like with Blood Crow Stories, a lot of it was, either really high tension music, or, big bombastic soundtracks, like when someone's getting murdered. So you just get the general idea, and then usually I'll open up a software instrument, and just start looking for sounds, and then usually I'll find a sound that inspires something, and then just develop it from there. Same thing, with Foley, like if the scene's, if the scene's calling for, a monster to eat eat a person, I need chewing, I need gore, I need blood sound effects, maybe some lip smacks.
Everyone's favorite sounds.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that you included all persons, not just humans.
Yes.
Thank you.
Monsters do not discriminate.
Yeah. Food is food.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of those things, like, thing that you said that I think like connected the most with my methods often are when I'm trying to evoke like a feeling. There's a lot of times that there's just like a million presets and things that I've like even made as presets. I'm like, okay, so which one is swoosh? Let's see. And you just go through them and you're like, no. Oh, no. And then eventually you find the one you're like, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, except not. And then you need to like zhuzh it a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, when it comes to instrumentation, trying to find the right sound, I enjoy the process of just trying to find it. But I also utilize a lot of, I call them callback parameters.
Okay.
Like something that I've set up already.
Like a motif.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Like there's a motif, and to describe what a motif is. And we'll get to this in the next question as well. A motif is anything that is a recurring idea. Now that's applies in literature, in film, in music, anything. A recurring idea that can be harkened on again and again. Like
think of Avengers theme.
Yeah, Avengers theme. Think of the color red in the Scarlet Letter, which I'm sure everybody had to read because English lit. But yeah, that kind of thing. That's a motif. And so yeah, like there'll be motifs. I'll have a particular instrument that correlates with a character. And so now when I want to create something for that character, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what instrument section I need to go to.
Right.
So it allows me to pick. I can create a mood, but I can put that mood exactly where I need it to be, type of thing. If I need a sad Johannes theme, Johannes is usually piano, because the piano can be a very beautiful instrument, but it's also pretty basic sometimes, kind of like Johannes. So a piano, but like, oh, maybe it's a heroic piano piece, or maybe it's a sad piano piece type of thing. And I'm able to use that to sort of generate a mood.
Yeah, when we're talking about assigning instruments or assigning even like little melody lines or etc., we're talking about getting into motif, leitmotif, themes, things like that. How do you go about, how do you go about assigning something like that to a narrative or a story? And do you have situations where you kind of assign that and then find that they evolve beyond what you think they were going to be, or change in a way that you have to change the approach that you're taking to them?
I actually love when a leitmotif evolves. Now, to build off of the motif idea, a leitmotif mostly happens in musical composition, but again, can apply in several other things. But a leitmotif, as the word light may imply, is a very small section of a motif. So it would be like simply just the color red, not just red as a concept, or the Beethoven's Fifth with the da 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 type of thing is that leitmotif, and then you hear the whole song, and that 4 notes repeats. I think it was like 2,000 something times in Beethoven's Fifth. That kind of thing. So that is a leitmotif, but having a leitmotif and having like that as a motif evolve with a character, evolve with a project, is always a treat, because it allows you to not feel like you have to use the same idea, like the same overall idea, but you can build off of that idea.
I was going to say it's definitely something that you can build off of. Yeah. Like if you just start with a simple piano, a simple piano can lead into a full orchestra. As you start adding elements in, maybe you add a little violin section with it, or you add a horn section, like you can build on a motif. Starting out with a simple sound is enough to get started, but you can always build. You can layer more instruments on, try different tones, different timbers, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and then even like outside of music, there have been like a motif that I've used for characters, like vocal effects, like as a character where I put a reverse reverb at the beginning of the voice, so it has that like ghostly lead in to everything they say. Yeah. But that little motif, that idea for that character and everything they say has that as the design. When I was writing music then later for that character, I wanted to have something that harkened to that motif, that that brought that back. And again, like you're saying, it allows it to evolve, which was
and
fun.
Just to piggyback on what Gabe was saying, it doesn't always have to be a musical thing. Like you said, it can be a sound effect, it can be a vocal effect. For season 3 of Blood Crow, we were dealing with biblical monsters, and it like disguised as humans. Right. So as they were like, if they were transforming into their monster, the actor's voice gained the effect, and that would push the scene along. And now realize, they're dealing with a monster rather than, but you can also fade it in gradually. So it's not just like, like an effect on, it's like, as they're getting, maybe they're monologuing, and it builds up into their full like demonic voice.
As far as just as quick curiosity for people here in the room, if you are somebody who is a composer or is working or wants to work in audio, could you raise your hands? If you're somebody who is interested in possibly hiring people to do audio stuff, could you raise your hands? Do we have people there? Okay, so just for these people, because I've hired both of y'all before. Yep. I hire people to do audio, and I think it's important when we talk about motifs and stuff to also talk about when you're on the other end of that spectrum. How do you provide something for the audio people so that they are on the same page with you, and so that you can make sure that you're making their life easier? Because a lot of audio engineering, I'm the worst kind of person because I've done both, but I've done the audio engineering part poorly, but I know enough to be dangerous.
And honestly, but that's the thing. Like, honestly, that's the best thing. The best thing is
enough to be dangerous.
You're enough to be dangerous, but you know what you're looking for, and that's an awesome thing. I firmly believe that anyone who starts a podcast show, some sort of digital creation, needs to edit it first by themselves.
Yeah.
And so you learn what all is involved in that.
Yeah. It makes you want to pay people to do it.
And then
you go, I don't,
because then, it works both ways. If you like it and you enjoy it and it works for you, cool. You save yourself money. If you absolutely hate it and it's driving you nuts, then you can find someone to hire for it.
As anyone in audio knows, it's really difficult, especially when you get, and this is the same in art, same in any creative field, when you get somebody who gives you the creative prompt and they say like, just, make it pop, give me something that sounds good.
No, working for people who have edited before is night and day compared to people, because people who haven't done it, who have never touched audio, think it's just like, you get the, can't you just?
Yes.
And if your question starts with a can't you just, the answer is no. 99% of the time, unless there's a fat paycheck coming behind it.
Yeah. You can't just press the make music button.
There's no just make music. I
was gonna say nowadays with AIs there is a press make music button, but it's not good yet.
It depends what you want to listen to.
That's true.
If you like bleeps and bloops, which I do.
But to go in a little deeper into detail, with Blood Crow, it was a scripted show, so it was very much like scene description. It was written out as a film or a TV show was. So there were scene descriptions. That my co-producer, who was the writer, gave to me. So and then if I had anything specific, I could go to her and ask and, get clarity or anything like that. But it's also like knowing the people that you work with. And I talked about this in the audio editing panel. If you understand the people you're working with and what their creative vision is, or even if their vision is have fun. Usually when I get sub in for Gabe for QPR, your guys usually do separate one shots and not the main storyline. So I have the creative freedom to do whatever kind of I want. And,
we just want to make sure that you don't hex something up.
Right. And then that's the thing. If it was a main line, I know you would give me direction of like, this is what we're looking for.
I think that's like
the communication.
Make it sound like Gabe.
That's the key thing here when you're hiring somebody, I think is very important to be as specific as you want it to be. Don't bring the specificity in on the back end. Bring it in right at the front and try to give some direction, because in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to composition and audio engineering, it's a volume game. You heard Gabriel talking about like hitting a lot of keys. He knows in his head like what sound he wants, but he has to find it. And a lot of these things, if you've never been in these audio like archives, even for the people who have a meticulous library, it says like door close 1, door close 2, door close 3, and from door close 57, they don't know which one specifically is the one, and they have to go and they have to search through all those. So after that, you're like, hey, I was thinking for that scene that there shouldn't be a door. They're gonna not be super happy, and
you might get a keyboard thrown at you.
One of my professors in the past would say the phrase "clear is kind." I mean, this works with all aspects of your life. Being clear is being kind to that person, and for that, for sure, just try to find a way, and then if for instance you don't know the words to use to like get the idea, that's when like just get like a go to a Panera or like a local coffee shop with your audio person, and then just talk and describe the thing that is in your head, because then you can be like, I want like the really fast quick notes, and like, okay, cool, staccato, I know what you're talking about, let's go. Thing.
Or if you can't do that, you can also provide references to scenes.
I want it to sound like this, and be like, John Williams literally made his career off of that sentence. So yes.
It's important to just, if you are somebody who does want your audio engineer to do whatever, they'll probably have like 4 or 5 qualifying when you say like, I believe you, trust you. And then they'll be like, no, really, please give me something. You're like, no, really, I think that you're good.
And also if you give creative freedom, don't take it away.
Exactly.
Because that's the most frustrating thing is like, I trust you, do whatever you want. Okay, I just worked 3 hours on this thing that I'm super in love with.
It now became my passion project.
But and you get, well, that's not what I was looking for. And it's like, well, you didn't tell me what you were looking for. Like communication.
If you have a specific vision, be as specific as you possibly can up front. And if you don't have the language for it, because not all of us are musically trained, and we can say, I want a crescendo, and I want everything to be staccato, and I want all the Italian words.
Right.
Fortissimo. But if you don't have
I'd like more fettuccine in there, please.
So many pastas. If you don't have that in your back pocket, like find examples of what you're looking for. Find things that just because you don't have the language for it doesn't mean that you can't communicate that. So always really important when it comes to hiring, and then from y'all's side as well.
Yes. Yeah. And it makes it like what I was saying before with like having those motifs and things like that preset, it makes it easier when I'm trying to compose something. I just wrote a small, like 2-minute long score for the death of a very important character.
Spoilers.
It's me.
And it was it was Alon specifically.
Tomorrow, Monday.
I was gonna say the death hasn't happened yet. But I like, it didn't take me that long to write it, or as long as I would have expected. It was maybe like 2.5 hours to create this, and that was like for everything from the composition to the writing to the recording to the different bits to mixing it to mastering it to making sure it sounded good as a music bed. And that was because I was using that character's leitmotif in a different way. It's because I was using the Dies Irae leitmotif, which is the da 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 thing, which you've heard in a million things. Usually means death. And I was using that, and I was using an instrument that meant something else in a previous episode, and I was mixing all those things together. So I already had stuff preset. And so when somebody comes to you and they're like, I want this to sound like it's in a mystical forest, and you're like, okay, cool, come on, give me some more. And they're like, I'm thinking like lots of like little bink bonk sounds, and you're like, okay, cool, bink bonk sounds, I can work with that. These are things, the more specific you get, you're narrowing down the options of randomness that can make creative processes a nightmare.
Descriptive adjectives.
Like
plink plonk.
Yes.
Bassy. Dark,
Lazy.
Light.
Yes,
stuff,
those things.
You know, even if you don't have, you know, like I said, like you said, if you don't have all the, you know, and quite like I said, as an untrained musician, I don't have all of the Italian in me.
No. Yeah. Need more linguine?
Yeah. I'm a little more just spaghetti and meatballs.
Yeah. I'd like a.
It's
but what I'm saying is, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, the simpler and the more direct you can get with it, the better.
Yeah. And from a
macaroni crescendo.
Before we move on to another thing too, very important, if you are a creator of any type, but especially audio engineering, do not feel bad for trying to force somebody to be more specific. It will save you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of just a heartbreak. If you can be a little bit more forceful and try to pull that tooth a little bit from the beginning, because if somebody says Mystic Forest, the problem with that is that everybody has a different, even everyone in this room has a different concept of what a Mystic Forest is in their head. And so you just, if you can, like I said, get that full tooth out by asking those questions early, it'll save you so much.
And you know, it's easy to be afraid to do that when you're first starting out and you're getting hired for the first time.
Because you want to please the client.
Because you want to please the client and you want to make some money and feed yourself. But the money loses out in the long run, because now you're spending 10 hours on something, and if you're not getting paid by the hour, your money is
or the client drops you because you're spending too much.
Or the client drops you because it's taking too long. You know, or you get burnt. You know, whatever. The bottom line is it's not worth it. It's more worth it to ask those questions in the beginning, and then if the client is balking or, you know, giving you a trouble, then it's like, you know what, you're not someone I want to work with. Bye.
If there's a change order also from the you know, from the end of people who might want to hire people to do this, usually what you do is you say, how long would it take you to do this? They tell you their, you know, estimated time based on your project, and then their hourly rate. And you say yes, or you say no. And if you say yes, and then they come back to you a little while later, and they have decided that it's now going to take longer for some reason, you say, I don't like that. You told me this, and I had that fair expectation.
And also, like, you know, if you should have a contract, or something that states like the parameters, especially for music. And this is more in the music production, like a band or an artist. But this also works for any other media, is specify how many rewrites that they can give back to you. So you usually good to say like 2 or you get 2 or 3 revisions, and then that's it. product's delivered. If you're not happy with it, okay, fine, but you're still going to pay me.
Yeah, we're not going to get into this unless it comes up in the Q&A, but contracts are really important. Contracts are really important for any creative work, defining parameters of what you're going to do and what, at the end of the day, it's one of the most important things you can do is have a really good contract. And I do recommend having somebody who legally does contracts look at contracts. I know that it can be exciting to not spend that money. I really is really fun to not have to pay that, but it's also probably one of the more important things you can do.
You lose out in the long run if especially if it like this is partially like why the SAG-AFTRA strikes are happening.
Yeah,
because these contracts they're not getting residuals.
Yeah,
and you're doing a ton of work for very little.
Yeah, well, and then there's also about automation, which is not always fun for creatives, and we can probably get into some of that too. But speaking of unique challenges, what are some unique challenges that you face specifically? Because both of you were on the podcasting track. We're talking about digital media. The digital media track has some podcasting in it. So you both do a lot of your engineering now for audio composition, narrative audio composition. That's mostly my fault, which I will take, but what is some of the unique challenges that you run into in that specific space? So for anybody who wants to learn about editing podcasts, for anybody who wants to learn about editing even recordings for short stories or plays or et cetera, narrative focused audio, what's some of the challenges?
Yeah, well, I guess, the core of that like concept of and like the name of this panel, composing for a narrative, is the idea that like most like songs or music, classical pieces, all the way to like creating a music bed for a podcast, it generally should be designed with a narrative idea. Like, you're introducing characters or ideas, and then they develop, they change over time. And then there's like, sometimes there's a climax if you're doing Western style. For more Eastern style, maybe it just resolves in a different way. Excuse me. But one of the biggest challenges that I have experienced multiple times, and I'm getting a lot better at this, is wanting the microphone to stay still.
Move the microphone.
Wanting one thing with an idea, and like having an idea for like what the client really wants. And they explain something, and this is like their idea, and feeling like I really have that. And then the client coming up with something later on that clashes so hard with what they initially set up. And like, I'm able to resolve that because there have been times where I'm like, okay, the client, sure, you're paying me, I'll do the thing. But there have been times where it's like, as a creative, as a person creating this, and this is art that I like and I'm pouring myself into to a degree. I want it to feel like something that I'm proud of, and like having to make that separation of like, but it's also a client and I'm getting paid to do this, and I want their thing ultimately to be their thing. Having to make that separation has like multiple times has been harder internally than I expected. Would
you say like separating yourself from the client's vision almost?
Yeah. Because like one thing that pops in my head immediately, and I'm still like, a little sore about it.
Right. Was some old wounds.
Yeah. Just
I'm up here.
The client really wanted like fantasy war theme thing, and they wanted like something to sound it, and they were describing stuff from like World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And I put together things, and they're like, I really want some like driving snare drums in there. And in my head, I'm like, snare drums is very like modern, like more colonial-esque.
Yeah.
And like
that's for the Brit track.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, okay. And I tried a couple of things with the snare drums, and like it sounded wrong. in my head awful.
Sounded
I was like,
wrong.
This just sounds wrong. Like it sounds like I made something wholly different. And I had a lot of conversations with the client, and they really wanted their snare drums in there. And I'm like, okay, I will do this for you. But I feel like I've compromised something internally, which is a weird thing because it's like, I just put snare drums in this. So like part of me is like, come on, it's not that big of a deal.
But
the other part is like, no, it's fantasy.
The artist in you is like, I would never do this.
Yeah.
This is, this is the worst thing to put into this bit. But then it's like,
put that fuchsia with that other yellow color.
Yeah.
How dare?
Exactly.
Yeah.
For
it's a surprisingly hard thing that I've run into.
No, I've run into that too, where like you start working on something and you get really jazzed up about it, and you're like, "This is awesome! I cannot wait to show this." And you play it for him, and you get and it's okay. Like that is like the people say like negativity and like someone saying like I hate it or something is the worst. No, like not getting a response is the worst.
Yeah. I want people to give me. I mean, if you hate it,
cool.
That's awesome.
Like if you're like, this is the biggest piece of, you know what?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, cool. You're a dick. You know, but if it's just, but when you, but when you just get nothing, you just get a stone face. It's like, oh, that didn't even like reach you at all.
Yeah.
That's definitely like.
Yeah, it's
breaking the emotion away from it.
I for sure have gotten negative feedback before, and I was like, oh yeah, thank you.
Well,
That's helpful.
Negative feedback is like, okay, well, I missed the mark on this.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting direction and I can redo it and go back. When you just get nothing, it's like, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Like you don't know what
artists' feedback. They like it.
Yeah, like give feedback and don't, if you don't like it, say why you don't like it. Don't just say it sucks. That's not constructive.
Really important. If you're doing this from any side of it, and this again zooms out a little bit into just the creative in general. Mm-hmm. If you're working with other creatives, you are creating because you love it. Almost nobody. There's not enough money for us all to be in this if we don't love it, right? Yeah. So it's like we are creating because we love it. When that happens, there is some emotion that's tied into these things. No matter what. I mean, there's a degree of like, this is an extension of myself. I'm vulnerable. And for this story, for this song, for this, whatever you're creating. So when you get to feedback time, especially if you're disappointed, step away from it and put your feedback in writing. Don't do it at that time. If you are feeling emotional about somebody missing what you've created or what you've done, that's on both sides, whether that's the client or whether that's the clientee. What's the vendor? Artist
in this context.
Put it in writing. Writing also is going to help for actually having like tangible feedback, and hopefully it means that like horrible things that you might have said will not get said, because you'll look at it in writing and be like, that's really mean. If somebody said that to me, I wouldn't be super happy.
There's constructive feedback and then there's non-constructive feedback. But to kind of bring back to your question about challenges we faced,
unique challenges.
Mine's more on a sound design, but it kind of fits in here. When we switched, our first season of Blood Crow was basically in a submarine underwater. So it was very limited sound wise, which was great. I could play with claustrophobia and a lot of different things. Yeah. Second season, we opened up into a Western, into a complete open world Western, like think Red Dead Redemption. And like, so I was given a challenge of like, we're doing a stagecoach scene. We're doing a train heist scene.
Yeah.
And like figuring out all the elements for that. Like I've got, I swear to God, I've got some sessions that are like 200 tracks because of all the different sounds and sound effects and everything that I had to layer into it. And that's a cautionary tale of scope of your project.
Scope creep.
Yeah. It's easy to very much be like, it's going to be, we're going to get the greatest orchestra to play this. And it's like, calm down. You're a dude in your basement.
Yeah.
Like you can do a lot with virtual instruments there's orchestra plugins and everything else in there, but that takes time and you got to understand like what you want. Like, it's good. It's basically, is it good or bad? It's cost, time, and skill. Pick two. You know, if you want it good and fast, cost is going to go up. If you don't want to spend it and you don't want to spend money and you want it to be good, time's going to go up. So understand that as you're planning out your, whatever you're trying to do.
The sliders. We're gonna take questions. We've got more prompts. Ooh, and we have a Twitch code. Okay, but we're going to take questions. Before we get into that, I do want to say, because neither of y'all mentioned this, probably because it's so back of mind to you now because of how often you work on this stuff. Bed music is hard. Bed music is hard for any narrative, anything. If you are hiring somebody to make bed music and you want it to have a lot of things going on in it, like a stagecoach or whatever, immediately when I hear that, if I was in the audio engineering seat, I would be very reluctant to deliver exactly what they want, because anything that's complicated, when people talk over it, it's hard for an audience to hear what the heck they're saying.
I was still young and impressionable, so I was like, oh, cool, a challenge.
Yeah.
And then I got done with that season. I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah. Bed music is hard. Theming is hard.
Oh, no, I wasn't even doing music for it.
Yeah.
This is just sound design.
Just beds are hard. Yeah. Especially the beds in the Hyatt. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. We're gonna hit questions. We'll take we'll take one of y'all's questions first. Twitch can go second. They're not here. We'll get you next. Right here. Toss the box. It's actually gonna be thrown at you.
Raise your hand. All right, I'm hitting you in the back.
Yeah. A great catch.
Bravo.
We'll do that no matter what happens, just so Twitch thinks everybody's catching.
So the mic is on the box, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, please don't. Everyone does it the first time. They're like,
it's okay. They mute it, and then bring it back up.
It's fine.
That's audio mixing 101.
Yeah.
Crushing it over there.
My question is, have you
directly into it?
So
yeah, just so Twitch can hear you.
It's good.
All right, cool. So this is horrible. All right, so
We're having fun.
Yeah.
We're having a great time. So have you ever composed a narrative, anybody up there, for an art installation like 3D art, glass, ceramics, any of those pieces? And if you have, kind of how do you come into that space?
So
the question is, have you ever composed a narrative for any type of art installation specifically, and how do you go about, how do you get into the headspace for that?
Yeah, since it's very three-dimensional, and you have to, the audience is going to look at it from every angle, and really kind of, especially when there's motion in the installation, right?
Yeah. So I did once with Virginia Museum of Fine Art. They were doing an event with the VCU, which is the college that's right next to it, where they had a professional violinist. I think her name is Anna Kiko Myers. Come in to do a performance, and they needed people to consult on both the art that was going to be around her performance and the music bed that was going to be around her performance. I happened to be in the right place at the right time for that, to consult on that project, and to talk about that, because there was a lot of big blue oceany kind of projector things that were going on in the background, as well as several stage props that were going to be there. And with that, thing that I was helping out the most with that project was trying to translate the feeling of it into something that would sit as a music bed, which I guess helped that I was doing the podcast at the time, because then I was like, oh yes, you don't want these frequencies. Make sure these frequencies aren't there at all, kind of thing. Make sure you're putting on these excuse me, these equalizers to make sure it stays out, but also to convey the emotions. Fortunately, there's a lot of things, because this was a classical music setting type of thing, professional violinist, all that. There's a lot of, in Western music, there's a lot of preconceptions with music. There's a lot of work that has been done for centuries to give you ideas that are already based off of things. I've even used some of that, just this tonal theory in the podcast for the characters. It's something really just for me. No one else is going to get it. But with that, yeah, there were a lot of things where it's like, okay, so this, like these colors of blue, this spectrum of blue. Well, there's this kind of music, this key that's going to work with that color classically. And then I'm like, okay, well, it's not working as well as we thought, so let's change it. Let's just pitch it down. But we're still going off the same theme idea kind of thing. I also had to compose, or help the person who was composing compose around a violin, which is harder than you would think.
I know people who've had to do this, and the only piece of advice I can give you is like, consume as much of what those people are doing as possible. Like Liz Harris, Raphael Antonasari, Nicholas Yar. These are all people who are composing for art installations. And it seems to be from like, it's one of those things where either they get a prompt of like, we need ambience and we want something that doesn't take away from things, or we want something very dynamic that is going to be very part of it. And obviously those two approaches are very different. I don't think that they get much in between. I think it's usually one of the extremes.
Yes.
And I would say just like consume as much as you can from those and try to, backward engineer what they're doing and why they're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of my experience is like, either you get something you love for the music to go with your installation, or you go with noise because you didn't love what you got.
Right. And you want it to be minimal and not take away from. It's always again, that goes back into like creatives working with creatives. It is, if as specific as possible is usually the way to go. But hopefully it gives you some insight. We're going to take a Twitch question.
Hold the mic up there. We'll hold it for the next person. And
you're going to be our official. You can sit down. You can
sit down with it.
Yeah. Or you could loom. It's really up to you. Yeah.
Kind of touched on this earlier, but Drew Baca asked.
Drew Baca.
Yeah, Drew Baca.
It's a good name.
When you're composing for different narratives, how much do genre expectations, sounding like fantasy, sci-fi, horror, affect your composition?
Yeah. So the question for Twitch and for the audience is, how do genre expectations, so the things that we kind of were born with and therefore are inundated with in some passive level at the very least, affect the prompt that you're given to compose inside of that genre?
So
I have a topsy-turvy answer to this. So this kind of, I'm trying to remember exactly how you said it. I can't remember, so I'm going to go to my other point. I think it does. It definitely factors into it. I'm going to refer to Mick Gordon, famous video game composer. For Doom. He's done fighting. He's done so much. Like if you look up Mick Gordon, you'll find a ton of his work. But when he was first presented with the Doom soundtrack, they told him no guitars, right? And so what does he do? He essentially kind of creates his own guitars with sound effects, with a chainsaw. So suffice it to say, it's Doom. It's a shoot 'em up game where you're fighting demons. Like anyone is going to go initially to metal and hard rock and that sort of thing. But that doesn't mean you have to do it in that same way. Like he gave a talk at a video game conference where a guitarist would hear that and they're going to pick up their guitar and load up a guitar amp and go with that. But there's ways to work around it in a creative way. And then sometimes that limitation is actually good. Limitation can breed creativity. For example, again, and going back to, our season 2, we did a Western. So it's like, well, I can't do synths on that. But maybe I can add a little effect to a banjo or to an acoustic guitar that might change it enough where you're blending genres now. So, it's one of those, like, you can look at it as a limitation, but limitations can really breed creativity, I think. Yeah. It's easy to get paralysis by analysis. Yeah. It's easy to get, I have a VST collection of like 100 instruments.
I don't know what 99 of them do.
Yeah.
You know, I know what one does, and it does well.
Snare drum.
Yeah. You know, and
It's a good snare.
And that goes back to Gabe's story about adding the snare drum.
Yeah.
You know, it's like in a fantasy world, there's no snare drum. Well, they want a snare drum.
Yeah.
You know, how you work with that is up to you and the client.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say with that, like the idea of having those genre expectations, like Alon was saying, like it's incepted into us by the culture that we live in, type of thing. And so, like growing up here in Western culture, consuming the melting pot of different things that we get, but it's still funneled through specific lenses. So you the moment you hear like those rising, shrill, out of tune strings, you're going to be thinking like, oh, this is a tense horror scene kind of thing. For the podcast, I've actually done a lot of like intentional subversions of things. We had an area that sure wasn't actually Western, but someone kept saying the words like Western words, and somebody found a cowboy hat because they wanted to just be cheeky about it. And so I was adding more Western things, but I was still using, even though it is like a fantasy setting, I was still using like different synths and different fully electronic sounds because it's like in that realm of, and I mean, hey, you know, that snare drum story really, like, it changed me. You know, maybe snares can live in fantasy. Everyone's fantasy is different, which is the important thing. And so sometimes synthetic sounds and stuff like that can exist in these. And so finding the ways to slowly shift the expectation for the audience, where it starts off with like a very, very honest, like durbo or like a lute type of thing. And it's
like a traditional
starts
fantasy.
But then like as it goes on, like there's like little twinkly sparkling instruments that come in, and then that turns into like synth chords that are just sitting in the background. It's very clearly a synth chord, but it fits so well because you're able to like slowly progress it in a way that sounds convincing. And so I've actually spent more time trying to subvert the genre expectations, unless I want to be funny in that same thing. There's an amazing instrument called Thrill Instruments, which is just a lot of fun for making those like spooky risers. For horror. But again, like I'll do that, and I'll do something else to add on to it to continue to subvert those genre expectations.
I will say too, from a professional standpoint, like parameters are important. Not everything has to be a masterpiece. Yeah. Sometimes just having those parameters so you can make sure you get the project done and then move on to the next one is very helpful. Very helpful to make sure everybody's on the same page. A question from, if you don't mind passing that just right on back. Yeah, keep testing it. There it is.
Hi. So good writers borrow and great writers steal, and I'm looking to steal things to do good things.
Good.
Allegedly, yeah.
So on a orchestration level, a great example of using orchestration to set mood in Game of Thrones before the Sept scene. The opening music is
the one
piano.
Yes.
And it had never been used in the series until that moment. So the second this scene starts, you're like, oh God, something is up.
Something's changed.
What are some other examples of an instrumentation being a stark surprise or something in media, so I can steal other ideas like that? Because I don't want to just go, hey, now there's a piano, you're going to find a bad guy.
I do think it's really important. I know that we're using steal in a very comical sense, but this is important because we're talking music and audio that everybody, I know, but everybody who is Twitch and out here understands when it comes to the legality of using music, if there are plenty of places where you can get royalty free, which would be the keywords, music that can be used, or sound effects that can be used in your creative works, and you don't need to clear those, and that is fine. But when it comes to anything, literally anything else, you're starting to get into a lot of legal territory, and it is important that you consult a lawyer when you do get into that legal territory.
So yeah, maybe
especially if you're streaming, especially if you're YouTube, anything like that, podcasting. Yeah.
So to clarify, I was looking for examples for me to drive my composition process.
You're looking for for something to influence you.
I only wanted to make sure nobody had a misunderstanding.
Got it.
Some of my favorites. I mean, like there are the slightly more obvious. Like the low bass tones for when something. But the way that and John Carpenter's The Thing, like the way that happens, because it's not super obvious that it's like what it is, but it builds enough of that tension, because it's just like I think it's like somebody just plucking on a bass string, and there's a lot of like boom 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 boom. That was really influential for me, because now just the idea of that single bass tone of whatever it is, with just a little bit of evolution to it every now and then, to me will always evoke like that slowly drawing dread. And I think that's a big one, where it's like, if it's something to you that when you're watching something, you're like this, or listening to something like this really sits in. Because another one that I immediately think of is the Wolf theme from Peter and the Wolf. Like every single time I'm like, if I'm in a like a live action role play, I don't know why I forgot what that term is. Like, if I'm LARPing and I'm playing a villain, like that theme is often playing in my head, and it's actually not that scary of a theme type of thing, but it is just sinister enough, and it's conveying that idea. But yeah, so like those Peter and the Wolf, The Thing, those are great, like just basic ideas for slowly alluding to a danger.
Yeah.
I would say like one of my favorite techniques is using silence.
Yeah.
And cutting out instruments. Not just, because a lot of times it gets used for just before this jump scare, everything goes silent and then boom, jump scare. But those are like using silence and lack of music can really create more tension. Like I would say, has anyone played the game Fear and Hunger?
I guess not.
Yeah. And I heard someone hit something.
It was fear. The fear hit.
That's a game. It's a very stressful game, and that's the point. So there's not much music in it, but there's certain sound effects. The bumps, the screeches, like that trigger the panic, because that just means the bad guy, the big baddie, is chasing me.
Yeah.
So as tempting it is sometimes to fill up space with a lot of noise, with a lot of sound, sometimes taking elements away can really, let's say it's even if it's just like something like a rock song, the good, you hit the chorus, and then after the chorus, the guitar kick, comes out, but it's the bass and the drums still going.
Yeah.
That creates a different feeling than just if all the members played all the time.
The classic Gwen Stefani combo.
Yeah. So, playing with elements, with silence, with space.
I think it was Franz Liszt that said the music is in the space between the notes.
Yeah. And the Antoine Saint-Exupéry, perfection is achieved not when there's nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Yeah.
Definitely play with space.
Minimal. Okay.
I think that works in with the whole like bass tone and then nothing.
We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to challenge y'all to be fast with answers so that we can go.
And we'll be available after the panel to answer questions.
But more hands.
More hands.
Yes. Bring it all the way up to the front here. Mika's got a question.
Good catch.
Good catch.
Okay, so how much money on average does just the project usually take, just like on average?
Do not answer this question. No, I will tell you, they need to protect their rates. That is important. If you want to hire either of them to do a project, give them scope of work and they will tell you, no, it's okay. But I will tell you from a project manager standpoint, that I budget out usually for audio engineering based on wherever I'm at in my creative process, what I can pay per hour to get the work done. And then I try to estimate roughly what that hour is going to be. I reach out to an audio engineer and they will tell me their rates. Audio engineering, when you're looking at professionals, you're usually looking at somewhere between $50 an hour to, I mean, it just goes up from there, but 50 to 150 is probably a pretty good, like, for people who are experienced. Depending on how many hours that project takes, 1 hour of a podcast episode, the audio engineering side of it, depending on how good the audio is, because it really depends on
depending on how much work you want. Because I can chop down an episode pretty quickly, but if you want music added to it, you want sound effects added to it, that's more time.
And again, that's that sliding scale of good, fast, cost.
I know that's not maybe as specific as you want, but there's some reasons why people should protect their rates.
And it's also going to depend on the scope of the project. You know, recording a rock band doing a 3-minute song is much different than recording an entire orchestra for an hour-long performance. Or, you know, again, doing
just miking the orchestra
or live, or live audio.
You know, it all depends on how much you want, how much the client wants, what the expectations are. And that's why, like, communication with the client is the most important thing.
So answer is a big ball of wibbly wobbly money. Stuff.
There's really no standard rate, you know, and for those that are producers and engineers yourselves, you know, don't undersell yourself. They're coming to you. You know, and if they can't meet the price that you're looking for, you know, because you got to factor in how long is this going to take me? What am I giving up? And, you know, what free time or family time or work time am I giving up to do this? You know, one thing I've learned with editing is, you know, for an hour-long podcast, just for pure editing, not for any music, I factor in about 3 hours worth of work. You know, and you learn that as you go. But, you know, one good thing to do is if you're an engineer, you know, time yourself when you're working on stuff. You'll figure out how long things generally take you and how to price accordingly.
Yeah. I know that's a difficult answer to your question, but I hope that's helpful.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Sweet. Okay. Other questions? Yes. Right behind you. Just pass it on back. And right here. I'm gonna limit y'all. I'm gonna challenge you. Give you really quick. Let's get a few.
All right. So you mentioned earlier in composing leitmotifs for characters, you mentioned that certain character had a piano because they were beautiful but also basic. What is your thought process in assigning instruments or certain effects to certain characters?
Well, to give you a shorter answer, but I generally have, like, I will start with trying to find something that embodies, like, the character, like that the player or the actor's perception of the character, or if you're the writer's perception of the character. And then as that character evolves, I will slowly shift it or realign it into what the or at least my best perception of what the audience's perception of the character is, type of thing. And so that was like with this podcast, a lot of the themes for the character started off very, like, rooted in what that character wanted to be, and which again is that intention, and then eventually became more what the character is, type of thing. And so, like, that's like, you know, with Gravy Boat, it's a lot of percussion.
There's a character named Gravy Boat. That's
Charles Gravy Boat Barnes. He's a wrestler. But like his thing started with a lot of, like, very Asian influences mixed with, like, Southern wrestling influences. And then eventually it was just like, oh, so how about just drums, type of thing. And then I can build off of that in much more complicated things. So start wide, and then I narrow it down to, like, a simpler concept. And then I also mostly go off of just my preconceptions of instruments.
Scott, I'm not going to cut you off, but I'm going to let you answer the next question when this gets passed behind you. Yes.
This is so good.
So if you were asked to create something that was going to be repeated, either because it's going on loop in the background of something, or like it's a boss music that is very difficult and the player keeps losing, how do you make sure it's not irritating or boring after?
Adding elements, taking elements away. You can have the same song on loop, but if you're adding in more drums, less drums, more synths, whatever, That's how you can change, that's how you can keep repeating stuff like a video game from getting too ignoring.
Yeah. Darren Korb is like the master of this. He's a composer and he does panels all over. I've met him. He's a very nice person. His panels get recorded all the time. Listen to Darren Korb talking about creating video game loops. He did, what games did he do? Man, Hades, Bastion,
yeah, I was gonna say like that
Pyre.
group.
Yeah, just a brilliant. He's the master.
Also, look up the composing concept of the rule of threes, which I prefer to just call the rule of twos, where the idea is just don't repeat a notable musical element more than twice. Yeah, force it to evolve.
There's more to that. We can talk about it later, but hopefully that gives you a good foundation. Yes, pass it across the aisle.
Okay, so a question about certain music elements. If you work with a client and said, "Okay, I got a nice Western theme, and they really like it. It's good," and then a year later, another client says, "I need a Western theme." You go, I have this. Do you ever reuse elements you've used in the past in future projects that with different clients? I ask this. I only ever use sound design and music. I can't compose. I hire people for that. But sometimes I'll be like, man, I really like that tune for this project too, but I used it for that project and that feels disingenuous.
So quick answer, it depends. If you made it, and we're getting a little in the business, but I'm going to try to sum it up. Basically, if it's music just for that project, you can't reuse it. If it's something that you have like in your own musical library, you can reuse it. But you may want to adjust some of the elements of it.
Yeah, for me, it depends on how much I felt it belonged to one project. If I really felt like it was for this one, then I will create something wholly different. If I feel like it was just a me piece and I just made it and it sounds super heckin' generic, but also me, then yeah, I'll use it wherever.
Man, if you my personal opinion, if you're using something that's open source, use it again, unless they know each other. And even if they do, maybe just see if they're listening to each other's stuff, like if they're like on your side. Yeah. No, I mean, if you're using open source, they're hiring you to give them what they want. If you know what it is and you already have it.
100%.
Yeah. Other questions?
Purchase the
right next door.
We got to wrap.
Last one.
Hello.
Okay, last one.
So coming in from it from a slightly different angle than what we've brought up so far, doing, say, melody and chord progression first versus like assigning the sound design first. So I know you can kind of do it both ways, right? John Williams had a lot of success writing almost all his themes on piano first, and then he reorchestrates them to have different effects, but the theme might be the same. Any thoughts on doing it one way versus the other? I know it's probably
whatever works best for you.
Yeah, project to project thing.
Whatever works best for you.
Yeah, I'll say for me, it depends on what like kind of feeling I'm trying to evoke. If I'm trying to evoke like a sense of order to it, then I usually start with like a small composition on piano or something like that and evolve it upwards. But if I'm trying to evoke like a villain theme or something that's going to focus around a single bass note kind of thing, then that's what I'll start with and I'll compose off of that.
If I do something music theory based, I'm building a structure.
Yeah.
So I'm building a song structure rather than trying to make an evocative piece.
Chaos. If you can, try to get it from your client. Okay, that's the end of this panel. These people are awesome. Give them some Foley's.
By the way, real quick, there's a QR code here for the digital media Linktree. There's a Discord. We're all in it. Sign up. You can ask questions there too. We'll also be available here.
Who are you and where can people find you?
I'm Scott Moore, aka Groove is for Life, on all social media.
Who are you?
I'm Gabriel Perez. I'm on Instagram at Amethyst Audiomancer and also on this Discord and the Goblins and Growlers Discord.
Sick.
bit.ly/Goblins.
Thank you all so much. If you have questions, we're going to be around.
Yes. I'm going to be roughly right here.